So this is kind of fun, Mike, that we're finally recording this. You and I have been having these discussions about where we're at with founding our new businesses and how we got here and everything like that. So this is kind of a record of our journey throughout the process of coming up with an idea, figuring out what that actually looks like from a business perspective, and then slowly starting to build it. So, you and I have been friends for a long time at this point. I
Well, I
mean,
think we're at like 15 years at
something like
least,
that. Yeah,
right?
exactly. We live in different cities, and somehow we both kind of got to this point where we're not really starting a new career, but we're starting a business at kind of the same time.
Yeah, I
And
think we're both taking a pretty big pivot, like from my experience working in restaurants and fine dining and catering to transitioning to like a mentorship coaching service, I think is a pretty big direction shift. And I think for you leaving law and moving into um, a computer app uh, situation, I think is a completely different direction. And I think it's really interesting that we are going to start recording these conversations. I think our check-ins that we were having were really awesome. Considering we know each other so well, we have a way of kind of calling each other out on our bullshit, and I think that's quite helpful. And I think that's good. I think also we've been building kind of in secret for a little bit, and I think it's fun to also update each other where we're at now.
yeah, I kind of look at this as having a accountability partner where we're building two things which are totally different, but from everything that we've been talking about and from the things that I found and the things that you have found, it seems like there's quite a bit of overlap when you're talking about building a business, from learning how to do marketing, the finance piece, the the basic business plan, doing analysis, and then figuring out how to make money, what you need to be profitable, how much it's going to cost to get you off the ground, are all these factors that are relevant to every single business that's starting, and learning about them and trying to figure out how all of them work together. When in my case, I have zero formal training in most of these areas, just an idea of what I'm trying to accomplish and making that goal worthwhile. And I feel like you're in a similar boat where you have so much experience in the food service industry where you can give back to people and help them not make the mistakes that you've made. And that is immensely valuable, but how to monetize that is not necessarily the easiest thing, because you still have to make a living and you can't give everything away for free. But yeah, I think that's kind of where we're at. And so this journey, at least in my eyes, is almost like having a gym buddy where the days that you don't feel like going, the other one's sending you a text saying, hey, let's go, like I'll meet you there at 7 in the morning.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think I think the last time you were in town, when you were like showing me the app and stuff like that, I was realizing how many things we do share, how much website development, marketing, exactly what you just said, that are very similar startup costs, no matter what it is, what kind of business. Of course, your new business is going to be very app heavy, whereas mine's going to be very website heavy. And so there's, of course, a bit of a difference in that regard. But I think that when we're looking at things like, okay, this conversation that we're having is a merger of both of our things, documenting both of the process that acts as just one layer of content creation for our companies. And I think I really like people that document their process. And I think I've done a really bad job of it in the past. I think I felt more like I needed to learn how to cook. I needed to learn how to run a kitchen. I needed to learn how to execute at a super high level. And I think that we all kind of saw Instagram and things like that as more of a nuisance and kind of as a maybe. But then when you look at some people that have come out of, just social media, cooks and chefs and things that don't have nearly as much formal training, they're bringing in a substantial amount of money just from whether it be ad revenue or things popping off and going viral on YouTube at specific times. One thing I think that's really interesting of a software like YouTube is that it doesn't have to go viral tomorrow. It can go viral in 3 years, and you will have already put the content in and done all the work. And now you're going to reap benefits of it years into the future. Of course, you have to maintain it and keep going. But if this is our first conversation, and I think we'll be lucky if more than like my mom listens to it, and if that's the case, but in like 2 years, and both of us have companies that are now more substantial and maybe have a couple of employees and things like that, and we're developing our marketing and our branding properly, people are going to want to listen to where we first came from, and maybe not in the millions, but maybe one day.
Maybe to the to the marketing point that you were saying, I think one of the really important things is to let people know who you are as a business owner so that they can either connect with you or not connect with you, but it gives them a sense of who they're dealing with and what that individual is like. There are some people who do, the pump and dump stock thing where they're just trying to make a quick buck as quickly as possible, and that's their thing. Personally, I
You
don't
don't
think
have
that
to
there's
talk so directly at me,
okay.
like as if that's my move. Like I'm the pump and dump
No, you're definitely
stock
not. You're definitely not. And I think both of us are. What we're trying to do is create sort of this community, or at the very least this record of what we're doing, and it gives context to everything. It also builds credibility. I mean, personally, I'm developing this piece of software, and I have no software development background. The closest thing I have is that I worked for tech companies as a lawyer, right? Like,
right.
I don't know. I'm not a high level. I'm not a developer. I'm not a marketer. I'm not a salesperson with connections in the industry. I'm not a VP of software development or go to market kind of strategy pieces. So there's really, objectively speaking, no reason why anyone should trust that I know what I'm doing for this. And I mean, frankly, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm lucky enough to have a bunch of people who are willing to talk to me to help guide me through these situations, and at least help me avoid the pitfalls, which I'm extremely lucky for. But the true reason behind Adventure Planet is there's a goal that I want to achieve that will give a lot of people benefit, or I think give them a lot of benefit for their time. Whereas in my previous career, I felt like a lot of the things that I was doing were, there was value add to it, but it wasn't making the world a better place. And so, what really kind of got the ball rolling for me was I started taking out a few friends, taking them out mountain biking and teaching them how to mountain bike, and a lot of them had never mountain biked before. And the reward I got is that now all these people are, like, several of them are regular mountain bikers, and so in my mind, it helped them get a skill that helps keep them in shape and plug into a community that is, has given me a lot. So it's a way of giving back. And so Adventure Planet is a way to try and do that at scale, where you're encouraging people to do things that are good for them physically and good for their mental well-being. And so with that goal, it's like, well, there's going to be a very steep curve ahead for me to learn all of these things related to business, but the trials and tribulations are worth it, in to potentially maybe be able to help some people. And that's kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning, because when I did this, when I sort of sat down and looked at what I wanted to do, I did this values exercise and talking about the things that are like my two core values, which is a great thing to do. I would highly recommend that anyone do it. And I
Super
realized
eye
that
opening.
it's
It's
incredible.
super once you do that and you start to see like what you are doing on the day to day, but also the people that you interact with and everything, and you can really start to hone in on who do you want the key players in your life to be when you start doing that.
Yeah, and who you want to surround yourself with. So it's critical, and it makes the hard work and the stress kind of worth it. I mean, right now I'm in this position where I'm completely funding this on my own, and it's obviously taking a big chunk out of my savings, and I'm not making any real money on the side. So that's been a huge shift for me, right? Where despite having saved up for, I mean, decades at this point, and being able to at least have the seed capital on my own without having to ask friends and family for, effectively a loan that we might never see again. And statistically speaking, I should fail at this. Um, it's very stressful, and it would be way easier for me to just go get another law job where I'd get paid a really good salary, and that's that. But I don't have the mental bandwidth at this point to be doing two jobs. And this founder thing it takes basically 100+% of my energy.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. First, I just wanted to touch on when you were saying that you funded everything yourself, because I think that a lot of people are maybe unaware of how there is money available through a multitude of programs depending on where you're at. For instance, in Canada, we're both based in Canada, so we have the BDC. If you're not aware of it, it's a business development bank, and it's pretty easy to apply for, and the terms are usually pretty good. Obviously, interest rates in the world are now pretty intense, but they'll work with you. They'll figure it out. They'll go over your business plan. They can also connect you with mentors and things like that. Here in Montreal, there's another service that's broken down by borough, which is PME, which I forget I think it's like Project Montreal Entrepreneur. Um, they're a little bit harder to get money from, but they usually like to see you at like year one, year two, you've got a bit of revenue, and you can apply for grants, you can apply for just a variety of stuff. And the more you go down the rabbit hole of looking for it, the more you realize there is money available for you. You just have to meet certain criteria. Generally, if you have a good credit, banks will take a chance on you. Now, when we go back to the food industry, it's a lot harder, right? When we first opened our ice cream store, Dalla Rose, we did qualify for some funding. We had a business plan, we had a couple months of revenue, and they were like, "Yeah, you serve a need in the market. We can see the demographic. If you present your case properly, unless you really run into someone who is, against your business idea, it's pretty hard if you present proper data." And we were able to do that. We were able to say, like, because of our experience, because of our connections, because of who we are and the product that we have and the neighborhood we're in and the way that neighborhood is changing, there are people to purchase our product. And you can see that just in our few months of sales. And so I think I wouldn't want anybody to feel like they have to save, 100 grand to launch a restaurant or launch whatever their business is. Should they, if they can? Yeah, absolutely. The more money you have, the better. The more you learn how to live lean for as long as possible, the better. You can reinvest money as quickly into the business. It can grow, and you get paid back maybe within 3 to 5 years, and you get a little bit of a better return on your investment. But I definitely think that if you're comfortable with borrowing money, present a case properly, and there are people that will lend you money. We're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about, 20, 30, $40,000. Maybe that's enough for you to get a marketing budget going. It's about $1,000 to build a website. If somebody gives you 10 grand that you have to pay back over 5 years, it can be really helpful.
Yeah, it's I'm very happy you said that, and that was one of the big missteps that I did right at the beginning of getting serious about building this app, because I've had this idea baking for 5+ years in different variations of it, and I finally got serious about it in November, and then really kind of kicked things off in January when I got laid off and said, you know what, it's time to either put up or shut up. And I kind of dove headfirst without really knowing what I was doing. So I had a quasi business plan, but no real business plan. I had no idea where to look for funding. And so now I'm in this situation, which is not bad because it shows I have skin in the game, where, I've put almost 20 grand into designing this thing out of my savings. And now I've just committed to another basically 40 to get this thing built. And at the same time, I'm writing a business plan for um, the futurepreneur thing that you pointed out to me, asking, trying to get some money out of them without having, I don't have anything to show them yet other than that demo that I showed you. But I think that there's
That's a
kind of
huge
this.
step, though, right? That's a massive step. And I think, like, just to fill everybody in on what Future Entrepreneur is, Future Entrepreneur is a program that exists for entrepreneurs under the age of 39. They also have specific programs for Indigenous communities or minority groups, or, there are a number of things that you can find on their website. And they work with the BDC to provide a smaller amount. So, an example is you can receive up to approximately $60,000 within their program. Future Entrepreneur will come in with a maximum of 20. If BDC likes it, they'll come on top and add the remaining 40, and you pay it off over 4 to 5 years, depending on what they agree to. And the rate is whatever the industry rate is. It's not like a loan shark or some of these more like predatory loan companies that will come at you and lend you money for like 18 to 20%. Those are everywhere. And those are like really, last resorts, or if you need money for a couple of months just to like pump something to get through like a real hard period, and then you just pay it all off in one shot. But you just have to be careful for repayment terms and how much that is, because we took some of those during COVID because that's the money that was available to us. And that was really, they're really difficult to deal with afterwards. They'll love to lend you more money when you pay stuff down, but they don't really like to work with you to make it easier for anybody to pay it down.
No, and I mean that is the I think that's one of the hardest parts of starting a business is, you were saying that you were able to show some revenue in the market that you were serving, which is great. But getting to a point where, you guys still invested a bunch of money in equipment and rent and getting a location and so on and so forth. And so kind of getting to that hurdle, which I've kind of identified as the hardest thing for me at this point, is to get to a place where I can show that there's a business, which will give people more confidence, right? Everybody has a business idea, but to actually see the business being implemented and the fact that it can generate revenue is I think, at this point the hardest thing that I've encountered. And so it's, how much do you need to prove that you can do something without putting yourself in a really, really bad spot? Because those guys who are willing to lend you money at basically a credit card interest rate, you know, it's there, but that follows you forever until you pay it down. And when you've got only expenses and zero revenue coming in, then all of a sudden that money adds up really quickly. And you know, before you before you borrow any money, you should definitely use an interest rate calculator to see
What does it
what that
actually cost by the end of
what
the day?
yeah, like how much you're actually paying. Because you know, if you've leased a car or bought a house recently, you see the interest payments coming out and you go, oh my god, that's high. And that's at 6% or 7%, whereas these are at 18, and that adds up real fast.
Yeah, you could expect if someone was interested in looking into something from Future Entrepreneur BDC, and again, those are based in Canada, you'll probably end up somewhere around 9 to 11% is what will be the loan, and it's repaid over 5 years, and they'll do probably the first year interest only kind of thing.
Exactly. And, we're talking August 2023 here. So who knows what this looks like in the
Yeah,
future? 'Cause-
and also the beginning of August, so who knows what happens in like 2 weeks.
exactly. But
Um,
maybe let's switch gears here a little bit. And I always like to talk about sort of the successes and hardships every week, and like the hurdles that I'm facing. So I'm happy to go first and talk about the bad before we talk about the good.
Yeah, sure. I think I'll just say, because we haven't really done like a formal intro or anything, but, Rich and I know each other from working in catering, and I've been in the food industry for over, what am I, I'm 38 now. So, 20 years in total, probably going all the way back to like McDonald's as a teenager. And, for the last 7 years, I ran and owned and operated an ice cream store in Montreal called Rose with one partner, and we were doing really well. We had COVID, we survived through it. we took a chance on opening up a cafe, which we had just the absolute hardest time with it. Lying contractors, inflated prices, government lockdowns, and people not returning to the office. We had done it in downtown Montreal, and it just didn't really work, and it burnt me out. It really burnt me out. 3 years of trying to do that really just took a toll on me. And in December of last year, I let Nick know that I wanted to leave, and that was a decision I had been thinking about for a while. I'm not going to pretend like I woke up one day and was like, "This is the time." But it was coming home and like sitting on the floor of the kitchen and just being like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to go forward at this point. I need a break because I can't do what we're doing right now. And I think there were a difference in the way that we wanted to do things, and I think it paid dividends for a long time. And I think it was just I wasn't able to be the partner, not only to my business partner, but also to my family or to my wife or to my friends. I mean, Rich, you can attest to it. We barely talked. And we went from, we traveled for a month together and lived together not that long ago. And we went to not talking because I was in a shitty place. And I think now I'm coming out of it and I can see that what I would like to do is what I'm good at is building systems and structure and seeing how to get everybody doing things efficiently. I don't think I'm necessarily the most creative person. I don't think I'm, a dummy at it, but I think that's probably lower in my skill set. And I think now what I'd like to do is be able to give that experience and knowledge to other people. And so as Rich has been building Adventure Planet, I've been building Seasoned Professionals, which is going to be a coaching and mentorship service that's going to focus on the food industry. And at first it'll be just me, but I hope to add multiple professionals to it from other industries to help fill in the knowledge gaps and kind of be like a one-stop shop to really be able to help people, especially people that are coming into the business brand new into the food industry and are trying to open something, or businesses that are struggling with something. And maybe it's food cost. Industry average should be like 30%, but most places are running at 35. Depending on how many locations you have or what your yearly sales are, that's a huge amount of money that you're losing. And I think there's just a couple of pretty easy things that we can do to help people. So that's what my focus is going to be moving forward.
Yeah, I think that is great it's a great endeavor because, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot of people who go into the food industry because they have a passion for feeding people, right? They enjoy the hospitality side of it. It's a very personal industry. And so it's there's lots of people who are good cooks who can't run a restaurant, right? Because
Exactly.
it's a fundamental different thing. And the reality of the food industry is it is very expensive. You need bricks and mortar, you need expensive equipment, you have a product that goes bad. You can't just keep things on a shelf forever. And so all of that adds up, and you're talking the difference between 30 and 35%, which may not be a lot for some people, depending on the industry. Is like a 5% margin would not necessarily be the worst thing. But when you're looking at, are you going to be profitable or not? Like how profitable are restaurants? Like the average restaurant is what makes
You're
10,
looking at a
20%.
profit margin of like 3 to 5%.
Okay. So, when you're looking at a profit margin of 3 to 5%, that 5% could be the difference between, losing 2% and making three.
Yep,
Or
exactly. Exactly. And I think that that's where, either you're able to invest in equipment to like fix something. I'm a big fan of brand new equipment because it's like more of an upfront cost, but you have to, it's going to work unless you break it. And I like, I like that as a data point moving forward. Although, we did get some really wicked deals on some used things that, we're still working to this day. Um, like an induction burner. Like we got like this 4 top of induction burners that were big enough for 20-liter pots. So pretty substantial. And it barely cost us what it should have. It cost us like a fourth of what it was. But in that time, we've replaced one of the 4 and probably should have replaced 2. So you're getting close to what it would cost anyways. Thankfully, it all works, but still. But yeah, absolutely. I think that I think the main benefit that I can provide to people is that most business owners or chefs or cooks or managers, they don't have time. They don't need more software solutions. They need help. They need somebody that knows what they're doing, that understands their challenges, and is not like, hey, just use this app and this will solve your problem. They don't have time to use the app. That's the point. The point is that they don't have time to learn the technology, learn the software, learn all the ins and outs of the back of the house. They need help. They need somebody to come in and just point them in the right direction and be like, look, here is your food cost. Here is how you can save money. This is one thing I can take off of you. And that's just an example of one of the things that I hope to offer.
Yeah, I think that that is, that touches on a really big, big point where you have someone who knows how to do this inside and out. And, the equation might change slightly from place to place, but when you're starting a business, and I certainly find this right now, is it's really hard to find time where you have the mental energy to take a step back and strategize, but you have to do it because it's so
Exactly.
important to the long-term pieces of it. But when you don't know how to strategize, you're learning how to do this business strategy and then trying to figure it out. And figuring it out is takes more effort than implementing it, where someone can come in and say, hey, you got to do X, Y, and Z, and this is what it'll do. They say, okay, thanks for teaching me. And now you've just kind of leapfrogged that entire front loading of having to spend a bunch of time just to figure it out. And
Yep, exactly.
de- and taking the time and the money to delegate it out, because you have to think about, I always like to think about, I like to think about everything in units of energy, and like units of energy are time and money when you're talking about a business. And so, one of the things that I really appreciate but really don't enjoy doing is doing the social media side of things. Creating videos with music, it takes a long time. I don't like it. I don't have the software to interface with it well. There's nothing about the process that I like. So I recently found someone who, can make me a video for $12. Great. That just saved me 4 hours of time, and it's 10 times better than anything I would have done. And so it sounds like that's kind of the thing that you're going to be offering to people. And, anyone who I think has gone through the business cycle knows, like, you get what you pay for, and pay for people who know what they're doing, whether it's finance, legal, operations. Just get it done, and then at least you have a starting point to iterate off of, which there's proof of concept already. So I think that that's fabulous, but it's going to
Yeah,
be
I
tough to
think,
get people to spend the money.
I think there will be certain people that it will be tough to get them to do it. And I think part of what I'd like to be able to do is every year do it for a restaurant or a food business for free that needs it. That is like just can't afford it, but is like putting in the hours. They've been around for a long time. I don't necessarily want to say someone, or maybe it will be, but someone that's in their first 6 months that doesn't have the money to do it, but has real potential. That's interesting to help. But I think someone that's been around for like 5, 6, 7 years and is, kind of still struggling with the same kind of stuff and is open to change, but doesn't know what to do it. I'm happy to be able to do something like that for free for somebody, and I think what I'd like to do is once I have a pool of clients is have everybody like recommend someone that they know that could use the service that would be super helpful. And just kind of do like a raffle where someone will get it for free. And in terms of like who can pay for it and who can't, I mean, I get it. Like every restaurant has super thin margins, like we talked about, but I think it would be a disservice to not present it with like, look, your yearly sales are $500,000. Let's just use that as a number. And you're 5% over food cost. The service that I'll provide you will very quickly pay for itself if we can bring that down just by 5%.
Yeah.
And generally, that's like over ordering, waste control, and sometimes it can be labor, but also sometimes it can just be mispricing things. So sometimes there's like really simple solutions to be able to do it. And I think tracking stuff and getting the data is the first thing.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea of even, you kind of get to kill two birds with one stone where you're providing a restaurant that really needs the help, that can't afford it. So you're doing a great thing for your community. And, you're actually, I think you're killing three birds with one stone. You're showcasing your skills, which is a great reputational thing. And it's promotional, to ask your clients to say, hey, do you know a restaurant that could really use the help, and to get your name out there where people can apply for kind of, almost it's not a charitable grant, but it is a charitable grant. Okay, the service costs normally cost 10 grand or 20 grand or 50, whatever the price is, and we're going to do it for you for $100 or $200, right? It's like, okay, you're getting a huge amount of value here, and everybody wins. And it's I mean, it's also a great marketing piece where, everybody's happy. So that's
I
I think that's awesome.
definitely, like I'm not unaware of the positive light it'll shine and the content creation and things that it'll create from it. But I think also like being able to give back to my community of restaurant people and restaurant folks and things like that. I think that's like ultimately really key, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's provided you with a livelihood. I think that that's a great approach, and it's one of the things that I keep hearing on a lot of the podcasts and YouTube videos is, give back, give back, give back, give back, which is really hard when money is tight.
Hmm.
um, and
Yeah,
it's really hard to
absolutely.
wrap your head around that. It's like, well, what can you give away? What can I give away for free that'll help people, have a better experience, save more money, lose less money, however you want to cut it. And I think that's the important piece, to make sure that it's sustainable, but without putting yourself in a bad position, which or a really bad position, right? You don't want to give your business away, but especially with the coaching piece, and I've done some coaching before. You can give people all the theory in the world, but until you show them how to do it, and until they practice it, nobody, it's one of my favorite expressions, nobody learns how to swim by reading a book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's going to be the hardest part is that the first couple of people will most likely be me going to my network of people that I know that either I've worked for or know for through other people that I've worked for or whatever to start to be able to build that bank of testimonials because I don't think while I have many people that are interested in what I do and came to the places that I worked and all that kind of stuff, this is a different job. And for the most part, in all of those places, I was the person doing the things that I'm talking about. And so it's more about getting people to buy in. And I think if you can get people to buy in to the next thing and the things that I'm going to offer, I think that's will be tricky. I'm not really explaining it super well, but I think that for the most part, once I have a bit of results from a couple of people that already think highly of me, I think it'll be pretty easy to do it. And I think it'll be pretty easy to convince somebody afterwards to come on board.
Yeah, I like I like looking at it that way, where you have to kind of stomach the business risk of not having critical mass before you can get there, because there is a tipping point. There is this point where people will legitimately ask, why should I trust you to deliver what you're selling, and why should I pay you for it? And you go, well, okay, it's a very fair question, because I don't you haven't had a friend of yours tell you, hey, talk to Mike, or to help you solve this problem that you're having. And once you kind of get those client testimonials, which builds you a little bit of a roster and get to critical mass, all of a sudden it's that referral, and that referral money that you can get, right, where it's going, hey, like, talk to this person, they know what they're doing. And then, because I trust you, if you tell me to trust someone else, I have a much higher likelihood of trusting them before I would, even give them the time of day. And I don't know about you, but that critical mass piece, it's one of the things that I'm struggling with my platform on, where the data just doesn't exist about what critical mass looks like before you can start generating ad revenue and so on and so forth. Like I'm sure it's there. It's just not very easy to find publicly. I'm sure, Facebook and Google have all that data in their repository, but they're not giving it away.
Exactly.
um, but yeah, it's so then the question becomes is how do you get that referral, um, how do you get the referral clients? And I mean, the way that I'm going to do it, I hope nobody, but he, sees this in a bad way. But basically, because we're very specifically looking at, the people in your contact list for Adventure Planet to share your availability with. It's not public like a meetup. Not everyone can attend. It's people who you have in a contact list. So if I get a text message from you or from an app that says Mike is available these like at this time on these days this week, do you want to hang out? Then
Hmm.
I'm more likely to trust that app because I'm getting a referral from you. And so
Yeah, and
I,
I
I
think I see that being your biggest challenge, with everyone being so hypersensitive now to data collection and privacy and everything. So, what is the way that you think you're going to be able to overcome that challenge? Because for me personally, like, if we go back to the costing thing, I need some pretty sensitive information, right? Like, I need to know how much you made over the year. I need to know what your invoices are. I need to know what everybody makes. And I mean, not necessarily, but to really give like a full picture, I'm going to need that information. Of course, I can just, be like, hey, give me your invoices and I'll tell you where you're at for food. But without knowing, the labor cost and everything like that, it's hard to give a complete guidance to somebody. So, I'm not sure yet how I'm going to get that information from people in a way that is, respectful, and aside from signing, contracts and like NDAs and things like that. But even then, I don't know necessarily that a piece of paper makes people feel more comfortable, right? You still have to give over the information. So,
yeah, I mean, especially when you start looking at the consequences of it, right? If I share information with you and then you go post that information somewhere and it becomes public,
mhm.
yeah, we might have a piece of paper, but then what am I going to do? Hire a lawyer at $500 an hour and spend 50 grand that I don't have to sue you? And like it's just, it comes down to trust in the business relationship where people have to trust you with their information. And, with Adventure Planet, it was actually one of the things that came up when we were beta testing, where one of the screens just said, share your, connect your contacts to the app. And one of uh, we had a good percentage of the beta testers say, well, I don't want to just share my contacts with a random app that I don't know anything about because one, all my contacts are not relevant to what I'm trying to accomplish here. And two, I don't know what you're doing with it. So we changed the wording to say, upload selected contacts that you want to go mountain biking with so that they know when they hit okay, it's going to give them their contact list and
Right.
they're just going to choose the people who they want to add. And then they can
And
add and remove.
that I think is really cool. I think that makes it immediately it gives people control over the data a little bit more, right? Where, I mean, all of us have been to websites and we hit accept all on the cookies and no one's reading those terms of agreements and things like that. But by the same token, people are not downloading apps specifically for that reason, right? So I think that's a good way to mitigate it. I think you'll still have some people that won't, but then I don't think the service is for them, right? Um,
Yeah, they
as
won't, or
an
they won't do it right away. And that's fine, right? Maybe wait till they hear some testimonials from their actual friends about how they like using it.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody hated TikTok, and now we're all on it, and things like that. I have this is like not business related at all, but I have exactly that problem just being part of the community garden here in Montreal. Um, people are refusing to people are refusing to send their emails for correspondence about things like organizing the compost or turning the water off or what kind of flowers are in season. It's a bit ridiculous to be part of. joining a community and then asking to not be a part of it at the same time. I don't think an email address to receive a newsletter from a garden is like too much to ask for, nor share it with the people that are managing it. And the amount of people that were not comfortable doing it just kind of left a sour taste in my mouth just with the thing, and kind of makes me not want to be, kind of makes me want to stick in my little corner with the people that I've met so far, and exchange seeds with only 10 people as opposed to the 200 people that are in the garden, which is a bit of a bummer. So
Yeah. It's very difficult when you sort of run up against people who are, you know, they don't trust strangers for what feels like something very simple. And I mean, I understand why, but at the same time, there's, the question always becomes, okay, well, do you not want any news about what's happening at the garden? Because there might be things that are beneficial to you, or what pieces of news don't you want to have? And, if I can bring it back to Adventure Planet, the conversations that we had from a sort of a design perspective versus a build perspective is we need to get as many people on the platform as quickly as possible and to keep them using it, right? That is the
yep.
initial goal for the MVP, because it'll actually be the proof of concept or not. And there's things that you can do that from a development perspective are more in your face and more likely to be successful. So for example, because it'll start off with one person having the app and they're going to click invite Mike to an event or share your availability with Mike, you're going to get a text message from the app that'll say click on this link and bring you to my availability or to the event that I'm inviting you to. And one of the screens, one of the things that we could do is before it actually shows you anything, it says download the app. So you think you have to download the app before you can actually see the event or the availability, kind of like
Mm.
what Microsoft Teams does or Zoom does. It's like, download the app before you use it, and then you click no, and then it lets you log on a browser. And, we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and ultimately we settled on, let's let people say that they're going to attend the event or they can see the availability, and then ask them afterwards if they want to use it, because now they've interacted with the platform. They know they don't have to use it, and they can just, if they don't want to download it, that's fine. If they don't want to download it on the first text message, maybe they want to download it on the 15th. But I never want people to feel like they're being tricked into something or being forced into something when they weren't, because it's the first impression that shows, at least in my opinion, a bit of deviousness for the purpose of the company. But ultimately the company will fail if it doesn't have users, and the more people that get you to trust, the more likely they are to recommend it. And so it's very weird to try and build that trust with strangers without having a personal interaction, because
Mhm.
you talk to someone, you go, okay, Mike doesn't seem like he's a snake oil salesman. You talk to some of his friends, you get a testimonial, great, easy. As opposed to a faceless person sending you a text message about your friends. It's it's a different situation. So how do you make it objectively trusting from the get-go? And yeah,
I
it's been a
think
big conversation.
I think this is one of my big motivators for wanting to do this with you and record this stuff and then put it on everything, like put it on our YouTube channels that we're going to create, put it on Spotify, put it everywhere, is to show this human element behind what we're doing. And I think both of us are learning. There's no question. I think we're also both leveraging our experience and our contacts. And I think that's really interesting. And I think it just kind of helps people see who's behind the process or the service or the product or whatever it is at the end of the day, right? And I think that there's, you can have an opinion of Elon Musk, whatever you want to have of him, but the guy is like making jokes on Twitter, and there's definitely a group of people in the world that like him just because of that, right? Whether you agree with his troll jokes or his not troll joke or whatever, that's I don't care. But there are definitely a group of people that are just on board for that and use Twitter just because of that. or now X, I guess, right? Now it's X.
Yeah.
You send in yeets to people, I think, instead of tweets. Um, like, I think,
Sounds like a Kanye shoe.
yeah, like, I think, so I think that's really interesting for us to do this. And I think this is part of the way to build trust. Is this the way? No, not necessarily. But I think being able to have these kinds of conversations where we're, a little bit vulnerable, definitely. I don't think there are a lot of people that would be comfortable putting their hand up and be like, I'm building this thing and I'm not sure if I know everything on how to do it. Whereas I think a lot of people want to create that perfect Instagram profile that just shows, like, look at me, I'm, successful 12 months in and now all $1 million in revenue. And man, it's so sick. We grinded. And it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah,
you know
exactly.
and I think I take a lot of inspiration from this one guy that I just found, him and his wife, Alex and Layla Hormozy, and they're just speaking a brand of Kool-Aid that I am down to drink and pass around. And it's just being super vulnerable, being super honest, and trying to share their experience and document as much as they can. And I think that's really interesting to see successful people do that. I don't like gatekeeping at a baseline. I think it's stupid, right? Within your own teams, within your own companies, within your own group of friends, like, I will often be tricked, and like, people can make jokes and like lead me down, and I'll believe your story because I don't know why I wouldn't. My stories are insane and like, maybe I exaggerate a little bit, but they're based on reality. I'm not creative enough to come up with like an absolutely ridiculous. It had to actually happen to me. Whereas, like, I can think about it now. Like, as a kid, I remember having some friends be like, "Yeah, we had a birthday party and we like climbed around in the air ducts of our house," and I was like, "Wow, that's crazy! I'm so bummed that I wasn't there." Like, there's obviously no fucking way we were doing that. Like, come on, that's not like a thing. But it's one of those things where I think, like, just I don't believe in gatekeeping, and I think the two of us doing this will help people trust us, whether it pays, dollar dividends, or if it pays, just feels good for the two of us. I don't really, I think both of those are valuable for us to get.
Absolutely. And you know, the trust thing is, I think it's one of the most critical things when you're building a company. And the you just pulled up a perfect example of it. That Alex Hormozy podcast. You introduced me to that, and I listen to it daily, if not every other day. And I would never have found that podcast if you didn't tell me to listen to it. And then I gave it the benefit of the doubt because you told me to listen to it. And what he's doing on there is making it very clear what he's trying to do, and
Mhm.
very clear what he's asking of his audience.
And
And
also what he's good at and what he's bad at, and how important his partner Layla is, which I think is super incredible, because I think there are a lot of people that maybe they don't do it on purpose, but they take a lot of credit for themselves as opposed to spreading it around, right? And I think there are certain things like, I am not a good marketer. I'm not a good, similar to what you were saying before. Like, I don't get up like being excited to like edit a video. I don't know how to do that. I'm starting over. I'm starting from zero. So I think that as you grow and if you can recognize people that are extremely important and have a skill set that you don't have, I think that can make a good partnership. But I think you also got to be careful. You gotta like pat them on the back, and you gotta, use your megaphone to congratulate them and put them on a pedestal too. Otherwise, you start getting resented, I think.
of course, I mean, you have to give credit where credit is due, and to be able to recognize what you're bad at, I think is a foundational skill that you need. I think running a business at this point is knowing enough about every little piece that you can have a conversation about it and ask questions, but knowing that you do not have that expertise, and there's going to be hundreds of nuances that I don't get. And that's fine as long as I'm working with someone who gets those, and they can, I call them magicians. You look at marketers, you look at finance people, you look at sales people. and the stuff that they do is fascinating. How they're able to do it, how it's so different than my training, and it's incredible. Someone who can edit a video and take 30 hours of footage and boil it down to a minute that shows exactly what it is that you want is is unbelievable. And
Yeah, it's
so,
awesome.
you know, I'm completely switching thoughts here, but it was something that I wanted to mention. I'm trying to build as much trust as I can, and I know that you're doing the same with our, respective markets. And the thing is I know that at some point in the future I'm going to do something that somebody is going I'm going to do something accidentally that someone is going to interpret as being devious or take it the way that wasn't intended for. And
100%.
I hope that when that happens, there's a there's a dialogue that exists where, one, I can find out about that so I can never do it again and hopefully fix what I've done, but also to know that the person will maybe give me the benefit of the doubt where it wasn't self-serving, where it was done with the best intentions despite the execution being terrible. And I mean, I think that is critical to my life personally. You have a relationship with your friends, your significant other, your the market you're trying to serve. People will Things will there's going to be conflict at some point, and you have to have built up enough trust and openness to be able to have those conversations so that it can be rectified and hopefully not happen again, or at least there's a road to improvement.
Yeah,
um,
I think you hit it right on the head, man. I think that's exactly correct. I don't know if I have anything to add to it. I think you definitely don't want to launch too late in, reaching for or striving for perfection. And I think that will ultimately lead you to making mistakes along the way. I think when we started our ice cream shop, like we had a good idea of what we were doing, but we didn't have all the answers. And there were definitely a couple of days where it's like, I'm just gonna do this, and we're gonna see if it works. We had some marketing things fall flat. We had some, recipes fall flat, and different products and ideas and things like that. And we weren't always perfect with our staff. I think we did a fairly good job, but I always think we could do better. But we also had the same team stick around for 4 years before COVID. People started with us in high school and left from their second year of university. Like, that was really awesome, and that was really rewarding. So it definitely felt like we were on the right path for what we were doing. But COVID was a COVID was a pretty big hand grenade and everything to change it. So I would say absolutely we're going to make mistakes. And like you said, I hope people understand that we're human and not perfect. I think the day of yeets and on X make it a little bit difficult because everyone is an expert depending on what the topic is of the day. And I think that makes it pretty tricky. There's definitely a part of me that doesn't want to do this podcast, this like recording of stuff and putting it live. There's definitely a part of me that is going to be like, he said two swear words, and I don't like that. And it's like, well, I don't, that's kind of who I am. I'm not,
mhm.
or, well, I think actually the way you build an app is through X, Y, and Z, and you're wrong because, well, I mean, maybe, but did you do it? Because like
Yeah,
we're trying. I think that's the difference is we're trying, and I think that a lot of people like to just put people down and shit on people because it's so much easier than
it's
trying.
so easy.
It's so it's so easy. Like, I mean, if you've ever been a sports fan, it's so easy to yell from the stands. But man, I started playing, like, I've been a hockey fan for most of my life, and I started playing in a floor hockey league, and I was gassed just running. I was like, man, I need to shut up a little bit. Maybe I'm yes, they're professional athletes that get paid millions of dollars, blah blah blah, whatever. But by the same token, like, when's the last time you ran for 20
Um,
minutes? You know what I mean? Like, when's the last time you did one of these things? And so take it down a notch. not pretending I'm perfect. I have definitely yelled at many players, but still, like, take it down a notch, you know?
I mean, that's the fun part of it, right? Where there's the emotional reaction where I'll watch hockey to relax and I end up way more stressed out than when I was before I
Yeah.
watched the game.
Oh,
And
how did you miss
you know,
that? And then you go the next weekend and you try to do it and you miss the same thing. And you're like,
yeah.
oh, right, that's how, because like it happens, you
I
know?
mean, I'm a terrible hockey player by any stretch of the imagination, but I can guarantee you that you could take people who played high-level hockey in university who are my age and they will not score a single shot on any NHL goalie that you put in front of them. Not a
Yeah,
single one.
exactly. And also,
So,
I'd like to point out that I said floor hockey. And as
yeah.
a Canadian who can't really skate, is like something I'll just get that out of the way right now. So we
Yeah.
don't ever have to talk about that again.
You and I are in the same boat on that
So,
one.
yeah, yeah.
um, oh yeah, I wanted to rewind a second because I think that there's something that intrigues me about what you said about having people start working for the ice cream shop when they were in high school and they stayed throughout university, up until COVID, when everything just the world got turned upside down and shaken. Have you figured out some of the things that you did that helped keep those people around?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think one of the main things that we tried to do was treat people like humans. From the food industry that I've spent most of my time in, you are like, you need to be a robot, you need to work a million hours, you need to sacrifice your whole life, blah, blah, blah. And I think that you and I, having worked for Jabu Catering with Ronnie and Donnie Mofford, these guys could not be outworked by anyone. And I think both of us took that to heart. And I think the important thing to do that I tried to do as much as I could was, if my staff needed a day off, I would try my best to cover them myself personally if somebody else couldn't. If I needed them to do something, I would teach them how to do it so that they weren't left in the wind. I would make myself available at all times. There was like a couple, I would, event, try to move in a direction of like, hey guys, I'm off today. Can you, like, unless it's an emergency, like, don't contact me. Like, you guys have the answers. I trust you, and that kind of stuff. I think letting your team know that you trust them, but I think you have to set them up for success. I think if you throw someone to the fire, there is only a small percentage of people that it will click with immediately, no matter what the job is, right?
Yeah.
I think there are people that can dig into their experiences and or their personality or whatever, and they can be successful. But I think you have to set people up for success, and I think you have to make it clear what it is that you expect from people. I don't know if I was I definitely wasn't perfect in masking my emotions. I think that's the thing that I would want to work on, and that's part of the reason why I wanted to leave and felt like I was being a bad partner, was because I wasn't able to suppress what was going on. I think there's but when I say going on, I mean like the challenges of trying to run two places and closing another one because of COVID and all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't think it's the employee's responsibility to have to deal with that stuff. I think their responsibility is to do the job that's laid out for them. And I think we also tried to do things that other places never did, but that we felt were really meaningful bonuses for people. So, for instance, we paid for our key players' cell phones, even if they didn't necessarily have like a managerial role or anything within the company. But they've been with us for a while, and we're like, we're going to buy you a new phone. We're going to put it underneath the company, and that, I think, it's not exactly a raise, but it is de facto a raise by doing something like that for them, right?
Yeah.
We had a delivery car that we basically let one of the employees use as his car. And if it wasn't on like, he had to deal with moving it in the winter, and then we had a car, and he could use it on the weekends. He could use it to, do what he wanted, cover somebody's bus pass. I think little things like that. We, before COVID, we were doing huge Christmas parties, or we did one in the summer where we went to the water slides, all of us, which is like pretty rare for an ice cream store to close when it's warm enough to go to the water slides.
Yeah.
So
Especially
there's
in a place like Quebec where, it's not
exactly,
summer year round.
exactly. And so I think, unfortunately, we fell away from that stuff because we had so many fires to put out, and our struggle with like during COVID was the rules changed so quickly that everything became about survival. And that was really hard to still maintain then all of those positive things for everybody. And I think the main thing is the main things I think that allowed us to be successful and keep the staff was training people properly, trusting them, and treating them as humans, as not as numbers, and hearing their complaints and trying to fix things in a way, but then also turning around and being like, hey, you asked me for this thing and I did it. Well, now I need you to do this thing,
Yeah.
right? Like this is a two-way street. Like, I'm not here just to be your babysitter, and like that's not what this is. This is a job. And when you're getting people that are 16, 17, and it's their first job, you have to give them a framework to work within, because they don't know, right?
Yeah.
They don't know.
And I think that is critical, especially when you have a job early on. I mean, you mentioned Ronnie and Donnie, who I will sing their praise all day long. The work ethic that they instilled in me, and I think a tremendous amount of other people who had zero experience in any industry. I mean, it was my first real job working for those guys, really showed how you work hard, provide a benefit, but also get taken really good care of, right? Like, I remember times when someone got sick and couldn't work and was having a hard time paying their bills, and Ronnie just, you know, gave them some money and said, "You pay me back when you can." I moved a couple of times and I helped other people at Java U move, and
Same
the
here.
the vans were always available. Hey
Every
man,
time.
if it's not being used, it's all yours. Just come pick it
Yeah.
up and drop it off. And it was those little things that when you're 20 years old and you have no money and you save a couple $100 on a moving van for a day, like that is it's the equivalent of a bonus.
Yeah, and it also like buys our loyalty and respect. Like
100%.
maybe, and I don't mean that in a shitty way. I mean that in a way where it's like, they're doing us a favor. And one more story with that. I really, as we talked about being fans of hockey and stuff, I had an opportunity to get group sales for everyone, for 20 people, right? One game, 20 people. And I went in and I asked, they were both there. And I was like, guys, I have this opportunity. Is it possible to not book jobs on this night in 4 months? And the only question Ronnie and Donnie had is, are there tickets for us? And I was like, of course there are. And that is like, I still to this day don't know what the score is of the game. Like, it was such a party for all of us to be there, for the amount of stress that we were all under, to have 15 cooks and your bosses go and just be drunk and party and have an incredible time. And the only thing they cared about was, were they going to be included or not? And if it was just amazing. It was amazing. So I think those things keep people around. They had parties at their cottages. They were so
Hmm.
generous with us. And I think what some people make the mistake of is that once you're the boss or the owner, you're somehow like in another world now, in like another stratosphere. And I think that if you're not part of the team, it's hard to keep players on your team.
Yeah.
And I think that's like the fundamental thing is like, even if you're the owner or the boss, sometimes you still got to take out the garbage. Sometimes you still got to do the dishes. Sometimes you still got to sit in front of the computer and update the or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter, like, you still got to do that stuff. And
Abs-
eventually, I think you'll grow out of that and whatever. But man, first 5 years, unless you've got, and I'm speaking more about food than I am about apps and things like that. But you're doing all the legwork, and I
100
think it. I think it's
100%.
really important for you to show your staff and your friends and your colleagues that you're still doing the work, and
Yeah.
not phoning it in because now you're the boss.
Yeah, exactly. It's the minute you put your feet up, people don't see you participating. It's a good way to build resentment within the team, and to be able to show that you're willing to do the dirtiest of dirty jobs and stay
Yep.
the latest is critical. Mike, we are at over an hour at this point.
Oh, I
Um,
don't even know if anyone's going to want to listen to like more than 10 minutes of this.
I know. I think the last thing maybe before we log off is, what do we want to what's on your to-do list that you want to get done in the next 2 weeks?
So yeah, so just so everyone has some context, we're going to do this every 2 weeks. One of us will try to like lead the conversation, and we'll switch between who's going to be the moderator. I think Rich will probably take the lead because he has already done this before. I like to talk, but I think Rich is better at leading the discussion than I am because I can go off on random tangents.
I don't know about
And
that.
I think that as we'll get our feet under us, we'll kind of slot into our two roles of who's who and what's what, and all that kind of stuff. So the first thing we were talking about doing was just trying to hold each other accountable to the goals that we wanted to have. And for me, I have to finalize some personal stuff, and I need to get my first ad done for the business and have it rolling. I now have all the social media accounts. I now have an incorporation, a business number, a bank account. Like I have all that kind of legwork now out of the way, and I have a website. So there's a landing page now for people to go to of my experience and what I can offer. And now it's time to start producing the ads. And I have a couple of appointments, which, who knows, like maybe that'll lead to clients and ads will actually come down the road because I'll have a little bit of work to do. But really the goal for me is in the next 2 weeks to produce the first ad.
That's
And
awesome.
unfortunately that'll actually only be a week because I'm going to cater for a week because similar to like what Rich was saying, having a new company that just burns money, you got to go make money somewhere. So
Exactly. Well, that's good. Okay, so you've got your getting your first ad up.
yeah.
I am right now. We signed the paperwork to get the app built last week, and day one for the build is supposed to be August 14th. So that is good to go, and I'll be involved in the process, but it'll be sort of hands off for me because I'm not a developer. So that's kind of the forefront now, and then my main concentration right now is trying to find some funding where I don't have to start liquidating more and more of my savings to pay for everything. So my goal now is to finalize the future entrepreneur business plan and cash flow sheet, get it submitted, and then start bombarding them to try and get some money out of it. And also to incorporate my company because I need to be incorporated in order to be eligible for a number of the government programs. So that's the goal for me for the next 2 weeks.
So yeah, so super quickly, if anybody doesn't know, it's about $200 to incorporate in Canada, and then depending on what province you're in, you will also need to register with that province and incorporate again, which can range be about $400, and so that's so that you have tax numbers so that you can submit taxes for your company. So that happened for me, and I just got took about like a week to get the documents in the mail, and then it took me about a week to click the right checks boxes online to get tax numbers, and now they're coming in the mail. So, in terms of things with you working on for Future Entrepreneur, you've spoken to somebody now, or
No,
you
but I
you
finally
haven't?
have the contact information of someone. So once I'm done with the
Okay,
business plan, I'm going to uh, email them and fire it off right away and get
because I
that
can
ball rolling.
share. I can share with you that I don't know if you get it right away, but I can share with you the stuff they send you as the first step so that your structure will look the same as their structure. Like
Perfect.
I don't know if you already have a cash flow done, but they have, like, it
Yeah, I've
doesn't.
I've done their cash flow and their business plan.
Okay, perfect. Because that's like that's part of their thing. So anyone that wants to use it is that like it's great if you have the information because you'll be able to do it very quickly. But they want everything under their system of stuff so that they can process the data through their checks and balances, right?
Of
So
course.
you having a business plan and a cash flow is fantastic, but it will still have to be lined up to their style. So just
Exactly.
keep that in mind when you're if you're going to be applying for it. So I feel like this is an ad for these. I hope they sponsor us by the time we get to like 20 episodes. That would be cool.
That'd be fun.
That would be
Um,
cool.
awesome. Well, we can wrap it up for today, and then yeah,
So do you want to have like an outro?
we could. I don't know what to say other
I don't
than
know either.
if anyone's listening, thank you.
Yeah,
hopefully,
exactly.
hopefully you're not bored to tears. Hopefully
Hi,
not. You're not
hi,
using this to fall.
moms. You know,
Yeah. Hopefully you're not using this to fall asleep to at night. But hey, if it's a lullaby, then happy to help.
I think this is a great way for us to record our stuff and put it up there. And I think if anyone finds value, fantastic. And if not, who cares? Because this is going to be a great way for you and I to keep tracking stuff until it reaches traction. You know,
Exactly. All right, I'm gonna hit stop here.
perfect.